Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dr. Khalid Mahmood Sahib, Upsign co-founder, Professor Jawad Dar, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum. I am Muhammad Ayub, Acting High Commissioner of Pakistan to the United Kingdom. I'm pleased to be part of the Upsign annual symposium. Upsign is a network of British Pakistanis aimed at addressing the socio-economic challenges of Pakistan and its diaspora through knowledge transfer. Pakistan High Commission is proud of its association with Upsign. The themes of this year's symposium, such as food security, developing future healthcare workers in Pakistan, knowledge transfer from Pakistani and UK universities, and skills and knowledge needed to prepare our students for international education are most relevant to the future of Pakistan in the 21st century. The symposium will help foster new relationships and develop new networks aimed at solving Pakistan's development issues aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Pakistan has a long history of working in partnership with its UK-based diaspora. We appreciate Upsign's efforts to facilitate British scientists to partner with Pakistani scientific community for mutual benefit of our two countries. Earlier this year, Upsign took the initiative of organizing development workshops in Pakistan aimed at addressing the challenges linked to sustainable development. I look forward to hearing the recommendations of the speakers and participants on how best we can create opportunities for bilateral Pakistan-UK cooperation in education, science, technology, medicine, and in engineering. I thank you all.
With these introductory talk, I think let's go to Dr. Asif if you are available. Why don't you give the background and what is happening in your part of the world, and share with them what is happening in Pakistan in this area and how we are responding.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Learning from all of you, and particularly you, we are kind of discussing and learning every day, and particularly the themes picked up for this food security session. They are also associated with the World Food Day, where grow, nourish, and sustain together. So, if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly at Sustainable Development Goal 2, where it says zero hunger and all type of malnutrition. So there, essentially, all these are challenges which have been categorized as questions or as themes of today's seminar. We'll be very happy to discuss all these things, but essentially, what I learned, and the FAO also advocates this, that, to achieve food security, we have to go towards two types of diversity. We have production gaps and nutrition gaps. So to address all those things, looking at the climate change scenario and other things, we have to go towards production diversity and dietary diversity. So these are the key theme areas, which would include supply chains, value chains, climate change, breeding new varieties, climate smart agriculture. So everything is kind of concisely defined with these 2-3 terms. So the world has started working on it, and we are also struggling. Let me, at the outset, give you a little bit on that particularly in the scenario of wheat, we are thankful to DFID, and KWS is a European seed company to which we are working with. So we are successful in kind of bringing in technology for hybrid seed production of wheat, hybrid wheat. So that is the initiative which is already in the field with the private sector now, where we believe that the gap which comes through seed supply chain, that can be bridged, kind of having same genetics across the field. So there would be less differences among the progressive and the average yields. Then also we had worked on a special type of wheat on the kind of phenology of wheat or plant type for fog capturing of water. And there are many more things. We are transforming the mango production system, and other things we'll keep talking, but essentially in the interest of time, I would like to listen from others, and then perhaps the interaction would lead. But I would like to acknowledge and thank the UpSign, Khalid, to kind of taking up this initiative. So we had a very comprehensive meeting this year when the pandemic started, and when the year is closing, he has been able to come up with this webinar series. We would like to learn through these series, and the recommendation certainly would help to design our programs according to the challenges we are facing. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Asif. Yeah, Professor Mumtaz, please go ahead. Yeah.
Good morning. In Canada, it is early morning. So good morning to all. I know in Pakistan, it is a little late, but in UK, it is 9:30. So first I say to good morning to my senior colleagues, Dr. Mukhtar and Dr. Asif Ali. And they are very kind, both of to me, and I have the chance to work with both of them. So today, Dr. Khalid asked me just to talk about some transformation from subsistence farming to sustainable agriculture enterprise. And looking into the food insecurity particularly, I have just shown in my first slide how the world hunger looks like today. If I can move to first slide, please. Yes. If you can see here, Pakistan is here, and just here we can see Afghanistan. And probably now the recent, this is basically the recent, the world hunger map in 2020. So now if we see where we are right now, it's almost 5 to 14% that is the hunger here. But there are in the red, there is more severe drought, so not drought, but severe, the hunger, that's almost, that varies from 25 to 35%. Can I move next slide, please? Okay, so this is basically the recent food state, which is again, this document and report is released by the FAO and jointly some other UNO 4 or 5 different organizations that gave us actually basic recent, the data about the food insecurity across the globe. For instance, right now, if we see almost 750 million people, those are undernourished, and almost 144 million children under 5 age are again undernourished. And again, if this scenario or the situation that persists, so then probably in 2030, this number will be passed to probably maybe 800 million plus, the people who will be undernourished. But if we see in a big picture, for instance, the 2 billion people, they are not getting actually nutritious food. For example, still we can see maybe in the upper middle class people, they are getting, as the WHO is saying, maybe 400 gram of fresh vegetables and the fruits, which is far reach from the other people who are living in the remote areas in the developing countries, and they are not getting basically not only the food, but which the real term or the definition of the food security is if you are getting the nutritious and access to the high quality food, which is the problem right now at the different parts of the world, and that's expanding basically across the globe. Can I move to the next slide, please? Okay, so, but the point is, for example, if we are not getting basically, the nutritious food, high quality food, and again, the one of, maybe I will talk in the next slide, but who are the producer basically? Who, if they are not producing, then how can we mitigate this food and nutrition and the low quality food? So these are basically the farmers who are basically giving us, and giving us access to not only high quality food, but abundant food as well. But if we go back and see specifically in Pakistan, we can see the problem here. You can see here the few example of in the developing countries how the land units are squeezing, becoming smaller, and practically becoming the not economically viable or not profitable. So that is one of the reason in maybe the developing countries, because the units are smaller compared to the bigger one. For instance, if we move from the north side to the central Punjab and the south Punjab and the interior Sindh, so again, Dr. Mukhtar, he was previously working with the HEC and he knows actually overall situation. But in the northern side, that is, the land unit are very smaller, and if we go towards the central Punjab, becoming a little bit more better, but in the south better, but in the interior it's much better. But they have in the interior side, for instance, or in the south, there are some other issues. For example, the water shortage and the keeping in view the climate change. So we have to improve basically the climate resilient cropping systems and the sustainable cropping system. But at this point, if we see the trends which we can see in the farm size, due to having low size or less size, that is not basically economically viable. So then what else? What is the next point if our unit are smaller one and the farmers are struggling with that smaller units? This is actually the 2000 data. Actually, I have this one. So at that time it was 5, but now it may be, I'm not exactly sure about that figure, but maybe it could be 2 acre or 3 acre. But this is how, if any farmer has low units, it's not basically sustainable. So if it is not sustainable, but there are some other associated things, I will talk maybe in the next slide, please. Okay, so with the subsistence farming, the farmers, again, when mostly the peoples are moving toward the urban, and with the rising in the urbanization, for instance, again, in the farming community, because I also belong to a farming family, my hometown is basically Gujranwala, and my father and my family grow rice and the wheat. That is the traditional farming system there. But the problem with the low farming or the smaller unit is they basically have limited access with the technology, for example, and also with the financial institution to get the some facilities in terms of the loans, and also with the terms of the technology, for example. Again, there are some issues, but this situation is further, I think, that have some, again, aggravating situation with the climate change, because the rising temperatures, some drought spells, and the pattern of rainfall and the intensity. Now it is not basically the well distributed. Sometimes it is the erratic rainfall pattern that is not making again the nutrient use efficiency becoming low due to some other factor as well. But the point again with the low unit, they have other problem with the market. Again, there is a volatilization in the market sometime, and again the profitability of the farmers that become low. A couple of examples. For example, the last year when the tomato was actually high production, then the tomato price became low. But recently, in the last week, now we can see onion. Actually, in the past few days, the price was almost 2,600 or 2,800 rupees per month, but now it came down again with the 1,200 or 13. So these are the few examples. Again, with the market issues. Again, the market is not stable, so that's basically some, again, issues. But the low unit and the small farmer with the subsistence farmers, some low technology, some, again, the market access, and some again the limitation with the inputs. These are again threatening the livelihood of the smallholder farmers, and eventually, if they are unable to produce high, so who will be actually at the end, who will be the sufferer? Again, the masses, the communities, they won't be able to get the nutritious food and the healthy food. So that's making again the malnutrition actually. Again, some other ideas like for the biofortification, which the farmers, scientists are working, just how can we make this element a better for trace elements, zinc nutrification, and some of the as well areas where we can contribute significantly to make this undernourishment better. Can you go to next slide, please? Okay, so how can we, with the limited resources, with the smaller unit, what are the options with the farmers, for example? So now some actually, this is not, I'm not addressing all those, I'm not talking all about, but few are, I know, and I am in touch with the few farmers who are involved in this high tunnel farming. Sorry, for example, in the smaller unit, I'm just giving the example, maybe in my maybe areas. For example,
I will request you to wrap up in 1 minute, please.
Okay, so now the options are, for example, if we can grow these crops with the high value crops and the high value crops in the tunnels, that makes some maybe the better return for the farmers. For example, I just gave them the backdrop, the one picture that is the chilies we can grow, and some maybe again in the next slide I have given the maybe this melon and the watermelon. The high tunnel crops farming, basically that's the low tech and the low cost, that can give some better environment for the producer and for the farmers to get maybe some higher net income and the higher profitability, but certainly that will be impacted with the climate change as well. But these are the few options. For example, we can introduce some niche crops that can give better return to the farmers, and also at the same time we can get maybe some better nutritious food as well. So I can given the couple of examples with the chilies, with the watermelons. Again, I gave in the next couple of slides, you maybe see maybe we can target, I know in the northern side now they are targeting, for example, the olive oil, and they have some branded, some small products that can be sold at a smaller scale. And again, that can improve the net income and the profitability of the farmers. If I can have a couple of minutes, then I can talk to maybe some policy issues which need to be connected with these, the farming sector to make it more profitable. For example, with providing some
1 more minute,
okay,
more minute to wrap up so that other people get time.
All right. So can I move to the last slide, please? Yes. Okay, so again, these are all, the farmer is producing again a lot of, even the smaller farmers or maybe the other segment of the farmers. But the problem is, again, I said one is with the marketing side. We need to provide some and link these farmers with the better, the technology, as I said, the low technology, low production, and again we need to make it our system more diversified, more resilient cropping systems. And again, if we want to transform the food production system, then we need to have some better storage conditions so that we can reduce the food losses. We can make it more resilient. So that need to be work on more towards the promote the smaller food value chain. So that is the key actually, if we want to encourage and we want to provide more facilities to our small farmer, because the small farmer, that is the big component in the overall picture of the Pakistan. More than 80 to 85% of the small farmers, and if we can bring in the probably the mainstream, we can provide them better facilities. And again, we can hook up all those segments with maybe good policy making. So then that is a situation where we can improve the overall food security, and we can provide the people, the masses, the better food and the better nutritious food.
Thank you, Professor Mumtaz. Thank you very much for your time, valuable time. May I request other speakers that we should stick with the 10 minutes allocated time. And the second speaker now will be Professor Lisa Burden from Edinburgh University. Professor Lisa, are you available?
Yes, hi.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm co-presenting with Dr. Riaz, and I think somebody hopefully will be sharing the screen. I hope.
Yes, it will be in a minute. Farzana is going to show.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
So I introduced myself at the beginning, but it's a real pleasure to be here and to present at this conference with Dr. Riaz. My name is Lisa Bowden, so I work at the University of Edinburgh at the Global Academy of Agriculture and Food Security. And once we have the presentation up, I'll just introduce it and take you through an outline, and Dr. Riaz will start and we'll co-share. Thank you. So our presentation is working towards a One Health agenda, healthy livestock and healthy nation. Next slide, please. And in this presentation, Dr. Riaz is going to start by setting the scene around One Health and then food security as a One Health problem in Pakistan. And then I'll take over the story and look at how we might solve One Health problems through systems thinking and improved health security, and conclude with a few comments and reflections on how we might operationalize One Health effectively. So I'll hand over to Dr. Riaz now for her to start. I'll mute. Dr. Riaz, and next slide, please.
Aisha, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Hi. Thank you, Lisa. One Health is that recognizes that the health of people is closely connected to the health of animals, plants, and our shared environment. One Health is not new, but it has become more important in recent years. This is because many factors have changed interaction between people, animals, plants, and our environment. One Health can be applied to establish a transformative approach to increasing sustainable practices in agriculture and improving the overall health and well-being of humans, animals, and the environment. Next slide, please. Next slide, thank you. Like many other developing countries, Pakistan is considered to be one of the countries most affected by food insecurity, poverty, and environmental disasters. About 2/3 of the population in Pakistan lives in rural areas and directly or indirectly relies on the agricultural sector for their food and livelihood. However, the majority of the rural population consists of small-scale households having less than 2 hectares of land and with little access to resources and services. Therefore, besides having self-sufficiency in overall crop production at national level, the small-scale rural communities in Pakistan, they are still facing the problems of reduced crop productivity, food insecurity, and poverty. In addition, low adaptive capacity to manage environment disaster is also adversely affecting the agriculture productivity and local food security in Pakistan. Next slide, please. Under the current conditions, more and more agricultural livestock interest is needed. Livestock is a subsector of Pakistan agriculture and contributes approximately 56% of value addition in agriculture and nearly 11% to the GDP. Furthermore, the livestock sector employs about 30 million people, the vast majority of whom live in the rural areas of country. Secondly, livestock production has value in Pakistan because of the increasing number of animals that do not produce variations. The Ministry of National Food Security and Research estimates that there are 44 million cattle, 38 million buffalo, 1 million camels, 72 million goats, 30 million sheep, 400,000 horses, and 147 million poultry, including both commercial and backyard. The livestock sector plays a vital role in Pakistan economy by providing drought power and valuable organic animal proteins and its byproducts. Livestock also plays an important role in healthy lives, whether for food, fiber, livelihood, travel, sport, education, or companionship. Also, output of milk, fat, eggs, bones, and mutton has a positive, significant relationship to the agriculture GDP of Pakistan. Moreover, Pakistan has a large animal production, food animal production, which may serve as potential hotspot for spillovers, events like zoonotic diseases, Close contact with animals, their products, and their environment provides more opportunities for zoonotic diseases to pass between animals and people. Next slide, please. Zoonotic diseases, basically, they are related to food animals and can be separated into three groups. First, the diseases with a potential for global spread. Often these diseases have significant human-to-human transmission, for example, SARS, avian influenza. Second, the persistent zoonotic diseases, which are related to the industrialized food production chain, such as Salmonella and Campylobacter, which are broadly distributed in the farm to fork chain. And third, the diseases which have been eradicated or drastically reduced in affluent economies through vaccination and culling policies, and through introduction of hygienic and animal biosafety management practices. However, in many poor settings like Pakistan, these diseases still prevail. For example, brucella, bovine TB, and many parasitic diseases. In addition to these, there is a new threat of antimicrobial resistant bacteria. Antimicrobial resistance is emerged due to the irrational use of antimicrobials, both in human and veterinary medicine, and is now recognized as one of the most important threats to human health. Next slide, please. To avoid transmission and spread of zoonotic pathogens of food origin, critical control points are required to improve food safety and security, and One Health, human medicine, veterinary medicine, and food and consumer authorities are major controlling authorities. However, there are some transmission routes that are made more difficult to control, like environment and wildlife. Transmission via the environment may take place of microorganisms which are present in the excretion products and in diseased animals and people. Wildlife constitutes a risk as it holds a broad spectrum of diseases, including many highly pathogenic diseases. Our complex food system and the challenge of its safety is about controlling and preventing instabilities. One Health can be used as the construct to understand this ecological dilemma and as the foundation to devise new solutions and interventions. Thank you very much. And over to you, Lisa, please.
Thanks, Aisha. Next slide, please. So briefly speaking, in order to be able to locate those critical control points that Aisha mentioned in the last slide, we need to be able to understand the system at risk, not only where animal production and agriculture fits in the context of the larger system, which intersects and interconnects with public health and also environmental health. And then beyond that, also how those systems are interconnected by different determinants, not just technological or scientific determinants, but also those that are related to the biosocial factors and economics and the environment. So next slide, please.
Two more minutes, Dr. Black.
That's fine.
Two more minutes.
If we understand the system at risk, we can, and how those systems intersect, we can understand those cross-cutting issues and also unintended consequences, and be able to set more appropriate, coherent One Health goals. So very briefly, in the context of animal health, those are about improving production and mitigating waste through reduction in morbidity and mortality. It's about ensuring food safety in emerging systems, and in particular, increasing traceability from farm to fork, and benchmarking disease burden through better surveillance for better estimates of burden of disease, and encouraging responsible innovation and regulation to improve disease control. It's about aligning our national action plans to global action plans to set appropriate and smart targets, such as for antimicrobial resistance, which pretty much underpins all of the Sustainable Development Goals. And lastly, it's about understanding how we can enhance the systems of other sectors. So where agriculture, as previously mentioned, relates to the mitigation and adaptation of climate change, and as we'll hear from Nicola later, achieving sustainable healthy diets. So next slide, please. It's important then to have a roadmap which takes us from improving animal health security all the way to delivering One Health solutions. And there are three elements of that roadmap. It's about improving disease preparedness and control through reduction of disease burden in animals and people. So that's specifically about identifying co-benefits and gaps between existing human and animal health surveillance infrastructure and where there are absences in capacity. It's about developing appropriate diagnostics and data sharing technologies and encouraging innovation like new technologies like remote sensing techniques. Secondly, it's about building capacity and expertise in human, animal, and environmental health through an integrated One Health approach, which means shared education, training, and public engagement opportunities at university and beyond. And thirdly, it's about acknowledging and addressing where there are sources of variability in our data so that we can improve international coverage, collection, and communication for One Health outcomes. And that means understanding diversity in production systems and market integration, as well as different user beliefs and behaviors. Last slide, please. Thank you. So in conclusion, I think what's important here in order to be able to deliver impact is being able to mobilize and move from the sphere of research and development into a sphere of policy and action. And the way that we can do this, I think I'm trying to offer here perhaps 4 key points for further reflection, perhaps to pick up in the panel discussion. First, I think it's really important to develop a concrete business case for One Health, and to use that business case then to communicate a shared vision between stakeholders, which illustrates strongly the link between lives, livelihoods, and the reduction of poverty, which then links to better health outcomes. In order to do that, you need to underpin it with a systems approach, which is about taking a bottom-up approach and identifying local resource needs, wants, and expectations, and then understanding community values and beliefs, but also at the same time taking a top-down approach and identifying and addressing legal and regulatory barriers which may impede or hinder uptake to new interventions or impede research and development. And lastly, because this type of working is quite new, it's important to explicitly co-construct guidelines for multi-sectoral approaches and ways of working, as well as understanding how multi-sectoral financing will happen. And then we can focus on transdisciplinary solutions by setting really specific targets and timelines over which you can measure outcomes and the progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. And in that way, create that impact that's essential for delivering One Health. So the last slide, please. Next, is just to say thank you on behalf of myself and also Dr. Riaz, our institutions, and specifically to all of those of you at Upsign UK Pakistan for the collaboration and great work that you're doing for bringing us together. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Lisa, and thank you, Aisha Riaz. Now we have the last speaker, Professor Nicola. Are you available?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes.
And I'm going to try and I'm going to try and share my screen.
You are there.
I'm here.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Okay, I'm hoping that everyone can see my screen. So I'm going to take a sort of a helicopter view and take a big step back from the focus of our previous speakers, but pick up on some of the themes that they have already mentioned. And I'd like to talk really broadly about a systems thinking approach to addressing malnutrition in Pakistan. So just to reiterate some of the statistics that were presented a little bit earlier, we know that according to the most recent Global Nutrition Report, that in Pakistan, around 37.6% of children are stunted. And over 50% of women of reproductive age have anemia. Alongside this undernutrition, we also have an issue with overnutrition, with obesity on the rise in Pakistan, currently standing at 11.3% in women and 6% in men, but increasing year on year. And I was really pleased to hear recently that the Committee for Common Interest in Pakistan has pledged to address malnutrition and stunting in children. But I think it's really important to note that it's not just about undernutrition, it's also about overnutrition. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. But I thought it'd be a good place to start to really orientate ourselves when we're talking about systems thinking. What do we actually mean by the food system? This simple diagram is a cartoon really that just illustrates all the components of the food system and how they interact with one another and also with policy that's right in the center. So if we walk around the circle, we have the food production elements, which includes agriculture, livestock production, as well as aquaculture. We're also talking about food processing, and this is an opportunity where additional nutrients can be added to foods through food fortification. We're also talking about food distribution, and how that fits into the system, and where challenges can occur in the distribution networks, as we've seen recently in the COVID crisis. We're also talking about consumption, and here we're referring to nutrition as well. And waste at all stages of this food system is an important consideration, and how we reduce that waste, whether it be at the production stage, at the processing stage, during distribution where food gets damaged, food waste at the household level, all aspects of the food system can be improved in terms of reducing waste. And of course, right here in the centre, we have policy, because as we gather evidence for improving each of these components of the system, it needs to be presented to policymakers in a way that's both accessible and useful, so that changes can be made to improve the food system as a whole. And this is a really complex diagram, and I haven't got time to go through it in detail, but it's a slide I put together some months ago, and I was considering how the food system and all its components interact with the Sustainable Development Goals. And as I created this diagram, it became apparent that food systems actually have a direct impact on almost all of the Sustainable Development Goals. And the ones on which it does not have a direct impact, it has an indirect impact, which is illustrated here. But I just wanted to put this up to show the importance of the food system, and how we need to think systemically to improve all aspects of the system, and how they impact on the Sustainable Development Goals. So this slide is really to show how that food system interacts with the individual, who will be at the center of this diagram, and I'll take it through it step by step. So here we have the food system with all of the elements that I've just spoken about, and within this food system we have the food environment, and by this I mean the environment into which the individual interacts. So the individual is exposed to food labeling messages, the cost of food impacts on their choices, food promotion also affects the individual's behavior. Physical access to food is a key component here. And of course, we've spoken already about the quality and the taste of accessible food. And all of these impact on the consumer's behavior, in addition to how much knowledge they have, how much time they have for food preparation, what their particular preferences are, and also their purchasing power. And right in the center here, as has already been highlighted, is all about the diet quality, and improving malnutrition absolutely requires the quality of the diet to be central. So how do we improve nutrient density? Well,
2 more minutes. Professor Nicola, 2 more minutes, please.
Thank you. Historically, agriculture has focused on calories, on increasing the yield. And this is because food staples are cheap, they're high in calorie, they're affordable by the poorest, but they are low in micronutrients. So achieving zero hunger is not just about the calories, it's also about improving the micronutrient density. The micronutrients of particular interest include iron, zinc, iodine, vitamin A, and the B vitamins. These are the ones for which the deficiencies are most common in low and middle income countries. I'm part of a study called the BusyFed study, which is looking at biofortified wheat as a way of improving zinc intake. And there are a number of different aspects to this piece of research. We're working with a biofortified strain called Zincol 2016, which has been produced by Harvest Plus. We have 3 work packages, which I won't go into in detail, but the first one is an RCT designed to look at the effectiveness of consuming zinc biofortified flour on health outcomes, zinc growth, and other health outcomes, including upper respiratory tract infections. Our second work package is all about how well the crop performs and the views of the farmers in terms of the yield and the resistance to pest. And the third work package is all about the consumer, asking whether or not the flour that's produced is acceptable to the consumer, what they understand about biofortification. And the purpose of this research is to generate evidence across these three work packages that can help inform policymakers to make a decision as to the scale up of the biofortification program in Pakistan. I think when we're talking about food systems, we also have to be cognitive of the stresses that are at play within the food system. We are looking at lots of challenges as we go forward, particularly around population growth, where in Africa and Asia, there will be an additional 2 billion people to feed by 2015, which is an enormous challenge to the food system. There are also other challenges around climate change and also natural phenomenon. We're all very aware of the locust plague that hit southern Pakistan in the last growing season, which destroyed a large proportion of the wheat crop. And of course, we can't go through this presentation without mentioning COVID-19, which has really highlighted the weaknesses in our food system, particularly around the workforce, around food distribution, and around livelihoods. So just to end with a key point, that the transformation of food systems is urgently required, and this is necessary to support health, economic, and other society goals. So I've just presented a really broad brush, highlighted some of the challenges, highlighted some of the research that's going on in this field, and I look forward to the discussion as we go on with this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Nicola. Thank you very much. And thank you for all these three presentations, and it was a very good, these were presentation. And I think the bottom line is that they are all suggesting that to address the issue of this STD2, especially in Pakistan, we need to have integrated and coordinated system approach to address these issues. That is the way forward. I think this is the message, a lesson learned from these presentations. May I now request our parliamentarian, Ms. Shandana Gulzar Khan, if she's available, if she can share with us about the government policy and what is the way forward they are thinking to address these issues, to address the issues of STD2, which is a big challenge for our country also. Please, Madam Shan.
Assalamu alaikum ji. Can everyone hear me? I'm here.
Yes, Ms. Khan.
Okay, so
Hello.
well, good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon to everyone, depending on the time zone they're in.
Yes.
If I'm audible, I'll continue.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. By way of introduction, I am the chair of the subcommittee of special products and agriculture in the National Assembly. The Speaker, National Assembly, Mr. Asad Kaisar, has set up for the first time a committee on agriculture in the National Assembly. And the reason is that agriculture and food are devolved subjects to the provinces, that is food production, but food security is still a federal subject, i.e. with the National Assembly as well as the Federation. That devolution of power has made it a little bit difficult for the center to be coordinating with the provinces on twin issues of both food production, food exports, as well as food security, which lies in a constitutional realm of the Federation. Now, what is Pakistan doing about it? As you all might be aware, the Prime Minister launched his emergency agriculture program nearly a year ago today. Of course, COVID wasn't here with us at the time, so the COVID factor wasn't taken into account. Now, what has happened afterwards, and this is on a global scale, that the world has realized that the two factors that were constant in helping humanity cope with the pandemic were, number one, our medics, our doctors, our technicians, our nurses, all our health teams on the ground. And secondly, it was the farmer who ensured that we were getting at least one square meal at our table daily. Now, in Pakistan, as all the speakers before him have outlined in one way or the other, the economic impact on the farmer of the government's policies trying to enhance industry at the cost of agriculture has been debilitating, to say the least. The last 40 years have witnessed a progressive taxation on both food industry, food security, and agriculture, thereby indirectly impacting the farmer as well as directly impacting the farmer. So what the Speaker National Assembly started on the 12th of March 2020, which was about 2 weeks right before the lockdown started, we had a big conference and we discussed 8 themes in that conference. Food security was one of them. But the entire idea was to lift up Pakistan's smallholder farmer and to ensure that the GDP growth is achieved entirely through uplift of the small farmer. In Pakistan, the small farmer is defined a farmer who owns or works or tills a piece of land which is less than 12.5 acres. Turns out that 75% of that land is being tilled by the smallholder farmer, whereas 50% of the production comes from him as well. Yet, in terms of access to financing, access to soil health, access to pesticides, access to quality seeds, water, animal health, all of these extension services, education, loans, financing, all of those are suboptimal, to say the least. So what the Speaker's team has started doing since the last nearly 8 months now is that we have a subcommittee that meets 3 or 4 times a week. We meet with different stakeholders. We meet with the provinces, we meet with the center, we meet with donors, we're meeting with everybody we can to talk about the 8 different themes and how we can uplift the smallholder farmer. Part of the problem is also food security, because while we want to change how agriculture works in Pakistan, we do not want to disrupt the food security issue. As you're aware, Pakistan has been one of those countries adversely impacted by the locust plague that was seen coming out of East Africa that also impacted Pakistan, but alhamdulillah, it had a minimal impact on our food, impacting mostly wheat, which we are now importing from the rest of the world. The sugar scandal was a bit of a problem in Pakistan, where we had sugar hoarding on massive scale because the government has now, for example, put in one measure, which is a punitive measure, that if big farmers that buy sugarcane from small-scale farmers and they do not start crushing on time, before the punishment was merely 50,000 for the entire year. Now that punishment has gone up to 50 lakh rupees, which is almost, I'm trying to figure that out, how much is in pounds, 50 lakh rupees, nearly 250,000 pounds, if I'm correct. Maybe Riaz can help me with the numbers, but essentially this is a punitive measure to ensure that both the food security as well as the earning, the livelihood of the farmer is not impacted by any private sector actor. Now, this is just one issue I talked about. For the seeds, the government has given, in the COVID, we've given a 50 billion subsidy to the Ministry of Food Security, out of which 37 billion rupees is going for seeds, and the rest of the 13 billion is going to the ZTBL, which is the Rai Taraqqiyati Bank, which is the agriculture, the government-owned Agriculture Bank of Pakistan, and we're giving them subsidies for loans. So while the return rate of loans was about 18%, now that has gone down to 10% for farmers, while other commercial banks are charging up to 40%. What this committee is doing, we are trying to refinance all the loans that the farmers might have taken before all the problems struck the farmer in Pakistan, including the floods in Sindh. So what I hope I'm trying to convey to the group here is that Pakistan is working on food security from multiple angles. And within a week to 10 days, we're presenting our plan to the Prime Minister of Pakistan. In this, we have included liaison with academia, with the scientific community. We're not just talking about the brick and mortar problems that the farmer faces. We're talking about each and every aspect of food security, but it must also address women, youth, the disenfranchised, the unemployed. It has to be a holistic structure. While listening now to this discussion, which was very interesting, which was looking at health as the one uniting force, so animal health, plant health, human health, and environmental health, we're also looking at the Sustainable Development Goals. We're also working through the SDG Secretariat. I'm in charge personally of SDG 5, but we're also working on the different SDGs because the FAO at this point in time will only work with secretariats that actively engage in the 17 goals of the UN. So the National Assembly is working on a holistic plan. I'm happy to have another update discussion just between us speakers in the next 2 to 3 weeks to let you know what happened when we presented to the Prime Minister, because I would be very keen on soliciting help for the National Assembly, for the Speakers Committee, from all those who think they can help. And help is not through finances. What we need are ideas. Yesterday, I had a discussion with Dr. Khalid and Riaz Khan, and the main issue I discussed was that in Pakistan, we haven't been able to do what my alma mater in England, Cambridge University, was able to do. They brought in commercial sites to Addenbrooke's and to our scientific community in Cambridge. And what we did was, we linked IPRs to production. If we can do that in Pakistan for agriculture, making sure that people do not get disgusted and leave agriculture practices for greener pastures, as it were, and the pun is fully intended, we need to combine livelihoods with food security. Otherwise, food security, in addition to all other factors being mentioned by our speakers, as well as my brief intervention, we will see that Pakistan will quickly have escalated food security problems. So I'll end with that and happy to answer questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Khan, and thank you. And this is very heartening to know that our policymakers are concerned and they are aware of the issues, and they are also taking steps to address this issue. Thank you very much for your time. From my side, I would like to thank everybody, panelists, Dr. Khalid, for giving me this opportunity. Now I will hand over this session to Professor Asif so that he should chair this panel discussion thing for this topic. Professor Asif, can you hear me?
Thank you very much, sir. You had a very powerful session and very thought-provoking discussions and some facts brought up, which leads to ultimately to policy and production systems. So with this panel discussion, I'm very grateful. I have a very kind of panel, which is, they are intellectual, they are practitioners, and they are working the aspects of food security, different aspects of food security in their domains. So I have with me, I'm very happy, Dr. Muhammad Azim Khan. He is chairman PRC. Is he there? I hope he's there. I can't see him. Dr. Azim?
I think he was trying to join, so we'll just say.
Okay, Azim is chairman PRC. He is basically economist, and PRC, Pakistan Agriculture Research Council, is the apex body which looks at the agriculture in the national and international scenario. And he is himself had been working on food security as economist, so we'll enjoy his discussions. Also with me, I think Professor Anwar Gilani has already joined. Has he joined? Gilani Saab?
Professor Anwar Gilani just sent a message. He has some issues, so maybe just
okay. Anwar Gilani is another pharmacologist. We miss him. He was there in the conference upsigned in March, I guess. Then we have with us Professor Muhammad Ali Imran. He is Dean of University of Glasgow, and he is head of communication, sensing and imaging research group, and is director of Glasgow Center for Educational Development and Innovations, and he is affiliated professor at the University of Oklahoma, USA, and a visiting professor at 5G Innovation Center, University of Surrey, UK, and he has worked previously from June 2000 to August 2016. So he's working there. So thank you, Professor Imran, for finding time with us. Then we have in the panel, Dr. Simon Holland. He is CEO Al Qaswa Innovations UK. He is developing applications for zero literacy farmers. Very important, very important. This is what we are facing in Pakistan. They include livestock farmers, livestock disease surveillance, supply chain management, and marketplace integration. We'll enjoy, discussions with him. So we also have with us Aisha Gulzar. She is Director JE Austin, a strategy development practitioner, facilitator, was able to lead, motivate, and mobilize individuals, teams, and organizational changes. Her expertise includes global alliance creation, private sector engagement, agribusiness, enterprise, and value chain development, and strategic planning. organization, capacity development and change management, very capable person, that this is what we need. This is what Madam Shandana was saying, that, converting agriculture into businesses and create businesses is a challenge here. Then we have with us Madam Aisha Ahmed. She is CEO and founder of Park Agri Market. She is professionally a computer engineer and leading an agri-tech startup which aims to bring offline agriculture vendors online, so farmers can find input products at their fingertips from the comfort of their homes. So Park Agreement also connects farmers to the output market, so farmers can connect to potential buyers online. So online marketing system very much needed, particularly in the COVID scenario. We had faced, huge challenges, and it is picking up in Pakistan also. So you have already listened to Honorable Shandana Gulzar Khan, and I have the pleasure interacting with her in the same committee. We were called many times in the National Committee, and they are in fact focusing. They have created a voice of the farmer in the National Assembly, and I believe there will be impact. She has already mentioned some subsidies and other initiatives the government is taking at the policy level. So, you can see I have a very distinguished panelist with us. So, and also the discussions are very important, which are focused on sustainability of food systems in different aspects, and particularly to see these aspects and food security in terms of new normal. What are the emerging trends in the society and technology? We'll be discussing with him. So the first, theme of the food security, which we'll be discussing, is climate smart agriculture, which is very much needed. FAO has its special focus on it. PRC leads in climate change also, at the national level. And when we talk about the food system, challenges of adverse climate change are essentially very critical. They are very critical, and we are facing, in the beginning, I couldn't answer the question raised by Professor Mukhtar, that the wheat is planting is in progress. We have about planted almost 35% of wheat, but because of low rainfall in the Barani or arid areas, we have challenges. Dr. Azim would talk about more about these things. So the situation in Pakistan, particularly climate scenario, is worse, I should say. We don't have been able to address them. They are so fast, so erratic. Then every year we have a different challenge of climate. So we have among us very relevant persons, those who would enlighten us. And I, first of all, if Azim has joined. Dr. Azim, are you there? Well, thank you very much, Azim Khan, for joining the panel. And once you are there, so we believe all the agriculture is there, and particularly the food security in a panel. So we would like to listen more about all these things from you, particularly that how climate change, climate smart agriculture can affect food security of crops, vegetable, fruits in Pakistan. And how then will in the same kind of broader theme, we'll talk to Bob Rees also about carbon sequestration. Dr. Azim, please.
Thank you very much, Asif, and also the organizer of the forum for considering me as the chairman PRC to share some of the initiative on the part of government and maybe on the part of National Agriculture System share at this forum. First of all, I think we are all fully understand that we fully understand. Can you listen to me? I'm audible?
Yes, you are well audible. Yeah.
Thank you. So, first thing that we all understand, and it is a global phenomenon, it is not a regional phenomenon. We are population growth rate of Pakistan is very high, almost roughly about 2%, and population is touching, it is more than 200 million. And as it has been estimated at global level that by 2050, we have to increase our food up to 70%, which is very true for Pakistan. And if we just look at last 10-year scenario, particularly from 2012 and 13 onward, Pakistan was net food exporting country by that time. And we have entered into a regime where we are now net food importing country from 2013 onward. Then also our total factory productivity in Pakistan is also very low. It has been declining at a very rapid pace. Similarly, terms of trade are not in favor of farmers continuously because input cost is very high and output prices are also vary, and farm cost of production is high, profitability is low, and as a result of all this background, for Pakistani, our farmers to produce efficiently and to produce more is becoming very difficult with the passage of time, and achieving sustainable food security goal becoming very difficult under this scenario. And we have seen in Pakistan from last, particularly from last 3 years, maybe it was not that much evident earlier, but it has now been very clear at all levels, at policy making level, as well as at research level partners, and even you see social sector organization or the policy maker. It has been now very clear that during last 3 years, the climate change has really impacted badly whatever we have achieved maybe 10 years back. So as a result of this rapid changes in the climate change, we from last 3 years particularly, where we are receiving a drought type situation is prevailing sometime, and sometime we are receiving over rain when these are not required, particularly during the wheat harvesting season. During last 3 years, the way the climate situation is prevailing, it is not helpful for our crop, and we are continuously stagnating in our total production. And we all understand that as a result of this climate change phenomena, our food availability in the country, we have been heavily now importing wheat up to 2 million ton or 2.5 million ton. That is the target. Even we have imported sugarcane after a long time. So all these kind of import, dependence on import, are less production in the country, less availability in the country, price increase, affordability of our consumers. All these phenomena currently are impacting our farmer as well as our consumer, because on the part of farmer they are receiving less harvest, less production, and on the part of the consumer prices are becoming very high, and even it is becoming very difficult for the government to address these issues. So this is the background, but at the same time, because I'm representing Pakistan Agriculture Research Council, which is an apex agriculture research body, our main function is to just coordinate and collaborate and coordinate with our provincial research system. The main challenge that is before research organization, research institute, is to develop climate resilient varieties. That is the first thing that would be very urgently needed, and we have to really diversify our genetic resource base. We were previously heavily depending upon SIM for getting these genetic genetic material and then distributing among NARS for developing varieties, the narrow gene pool will not help our country, because now in varietal development, we have to focus a lot on abiotic stresses, including heat tolerance, including drought resistance. Even we have to now focus a lot on having varieties that can withstand with certain type of abiotic stresses like salinity, because over exploitation of underground water that also creates a lot of problem, and we have our soils are affected, and as a result of high pH in soils and salinity in soils, there is a need to now develop new strains and new varieties. And there are many other issues as well from Pakistan agriculture point of view. For instance,
Dr. Azim, we have time constraint, kindly wrap up.
With only 2-3 things, and only maybe in 2 minutes time. So challenges are known to everybody. The most important thing for all of us is that I already mentioned, to develop a germplasm varieties. Then second is in Pakistan, the second issue is in agriculture is we are heavily burning because of cropping intensity our residues. And the challenges that we are facing, and we have also in Pakistan developed a new process where we can incorporate these residues, and that can help in increasing organic matter, and that will help in increasing productivity. Also, we have to very quickly shift to conservative agriculture where it can become profitable. Lot of work has been done. Pilots, results from the pilots are there. The only thing how quickly we will scale up. And similarly, our emission from rice crop in terms of methane and from the livestock are very high. And our number of livestock is almost equal to the number of population that we have in Pakistan. We have to really switch over to have more productive animals. So areas are very clear: smart agriculture and water use efficiency, residue incorporation, organic matter build-up, productivity, profitability, resiliences. All these things are very important, and last 3 years really clearly highlighted the importance of promoting climate resilient agriculture in the country for achieving sustainable food security.
Thank you, Dr. Azim. We'll bother you more with the question answer session, but anyway, I know you can speak for hours on this subject. This is your subject, but we have to move to Professor Bob. Is he there, Bob? So, we would like to listen more from you on carbon sequestration, or the next theme is nitrogen, nutrients use efficiency, because Professor Gilani is not there. So you can collectively take, let's say 5 minutes.
Okay,
and,
thank you. And yeah, thank you for the invitation to join this really interesting discussion today, and hello to everybody. So we've heard a lot already about climate change, and climate change remains one of the biggest threats to humanity in the 21st century. Collectively, the world has come together to try to address the problems of climate change, and despite our diversions with COVID, understandable diversions this year with COVID, climate change has been progressing in the background and represents a really significant threat to world communities. And I think Pakistan finds itself in a particularly difficult position with regards to climate change, because despite the fact that Pakistan has very little current or historic responsibility for emissions, it is particularly seriously challenged by the impacts of climate change. So the latest predictions suggest that temperature increases across Pakistan will be very significant depending on which emission scenario we follow. And there are going to be impacts on the variability and reliability of rainfall, both of which are critical to agriculture. And agriculture and land use find itself really sort of trapped in the sort of crosswires of this debate, because agriculture is not only a very significant source of greenhouse gas emissions, and in Pakistan it makes up almost half of the emissions from the country, but agriculture is also particularly severely threatened by climate change. So it has these twin impacts. And as we move forward, we have to find a pathway that both reduces emissions and reduces the vulnerability of our agricultural systems to climate change. So I think what Dr. Azim was talking about was resilience, and I think that's a really critical issue here. We need to develop our systems in a way that is resilient to climate change, but also reduces their emissions. So this is where climate smart agriculture comes in. And there's no silver bullet here. We've got to take a whole systems approach to development. We've got to think of the sort of system that Nicola was talking about how the various components of these systems interact, and think about how we to reduce emissions across the system in a way that is compatible with food security. And that's going to involve looking at all components of the system. We're going to need investment here. I mean, the smallholder systems in particular really struggle with this issue of investing in new technologies to deliver reductions in emissions. But we're going to need to look at resource inputs. You mentioned nitrogen fertilizers. These are quite an important source of emission. Then we need to look at the sort of movement of nutrients within the farm system, the manure management, the livestock, and how these components of the system interact. So it's a huge challenge. We're already working with colleagues in Pakistan to try to help deliver some of these changes. But it's going to be difficult because, I mean, it's easy to reduce emissions simply by stopping doing agriculture, but that's not an option with agriculture because we need the food supply. So we need to reduce emissions, and we need to use the land to pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere through incorporating more carbon into soils. So lots more we could say about this, but I'll stop there because I really welcome some questions in this area and want to offer opportunities to other colleagues to say something. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. You know, you were perfect and spot on, you know, very nicely, discussed, adding to the points Dr. Azim has given on diversity, resilience, and protective agriculture. So you focused on systematic approach, and we are grateful that you are working with our Pakistani colleagues, and we believe that will add to our knowledge and ultimately the technology we are struggling with to handle the climate change impacts. Okay, then our next theme is digital and data-driven agriculture, which is a focus now, and which we believe is the way forward, be it for precision agriculture, be it for supply chain improvement, be it for value addition, traceability, or whatnot. So, you know, IT and the use of robotics also. So, you know, and there is a good degree of sensitization in Pakistan at the government level that to use digital agriculture and to have precision agriculture model farms, and there are quite a few projects rolled out already. So we have very good capable people with us, Professor Imran and Dr. Simon. They would speak, one by one on that how digital platform should be leveraged for farmer education. This is the top thing. We did a study, and we believe this is the most important thing which can turn around the kind of impacts of climate change and increase the productivity. Then upon weather reporting, pest and disease surveillance, livestock diagnostics, selling their produce, and quality control, traceability, like I was discussing all these things. So we expect from them, they will give us some insight. So how we can leverage this data more effectively. So first, I should go to Professor Imran.
Okay, thank you very much, Asif. I will be very brief and to the point. So one related aspect that Professor Bob Rees has just pointed out as well, to do anything systematic in terms of research, digital platforms can be very helpful. So you can really record what interventions are being made in any specific setting on a farm or in a set of farms. And then you can actually record and follow up how this is affecting the production capability, the supply chain effect, as well as the benefit to the end user and farmer. So all this can be recorded and analyzed. So this is one great benefit of the digital platform that we have to utilize in Pakistan for doing good research that will benefit not just Pakistan, but other countries as well. Of course, the other benefits of digital connectivity are very obvious. You have already highlighted them. It will provide farmer an access to local markets using unconventional means, for example, WhatsApp type of groups and other mechanisms to identify opportunities, better opportunities for farmers, cutting the middleman out, but also providing Internet of Things like sensing capabilities for the farmers to monitor the environment, the pests, the health of the crops, and not just crops, but cattle and livestock as well, which is essential for a farmer's success. It can provide easy access to different financing instruments to the farmers, but there are barriers to the uptake of this digital connectivity. So I will only highlight 2 barriers and leave the other contributors to comment on them. But one barrier is the cost of digital connectivity, and the answer to that is not just 4G and 5G are required here. Any type of digital connectivity can benefit the farmers. So LoRaWAN and other Internet of Things type of technological solutions are very cheap and can still benefit the farmer. And the other important thing is community-driven or local council supported wireless connectivity solutions, which many countries like India, Indonesia, Malaysia, they are trying to adopt, and many countries in Africa are trying to adopt, are very cheap solutions. They do not work as well as 5G type of technologies, but they do solve pertinent problems for the farmers. So that's one important aspect, to have community-driven architectures. And the other one is, I think Dr. Salman will shed more light on it, how to enable access to digital connectivity with minimum amount of training to people who are not literate, or people who are not ready for it. So how can we shorten that cycle? So I will stop here and let the other panelists add to these comments.
Sure, thank you, Professor Imran.
Yeah, please, Dr. Simon. Yeah.
Yeah, so what I find where we are right now, there is a tremendous opportunity to engage with smallholder farmers because of the developments of technology and actually how it's coming cheaper and cheaper. And Pakistan being a neighbor of China with a lot of trade flowing between the two, the availability of low-cost handsets that are very smart handsets is becoming more and more. So the question is, how do we get those to work for the smallest farmers, and how do we get that massive amount of knowledge that's available in a lot of the research institutes across Pakistan? How do we get that into the hands of the farmers? And there are a few different barriers. Now, one of the first ones is literacy. We've always taken a focus on using content, and very rich content, and by that I mean animations, to explain concepts to farmers, and we can do those in local language. And the benefit there is, with a little bit of in-app training, we can get the farmers to be able to navigate through and train themselves and start to learn without having to be literate and be able to read the text prompts that you get in a lot of apps. So just using a different type of medium rather than text only. And if I tell you the truth, when we first started doing this, we completely erased all text from the systems that we built, only to realize that we were doing a disservice then, and actually having a combination of the audio with the text could actually help to enhance literacy potentially as well. So I've talked a bit about how we see we can communicate with farmers. The next question is, how do you actually get them to adopt things? How do you get them to engage with that content? And that's another thing, that if we just go out and preach and say, you do this, it doesn't actually have the impact. Now, the only way you can go with a very limited set of practices and say, do this, is if you're doing real face-to-face field trials and the farmers see things happening. And often you have to work with a progressive farmer, and then a year later, some of the other farmers adopt it. But again, we want to try and do something bigger and faster. The technology can mean we can leverage this knowledge out to a lot more people a lot more quickly. And the point of the engagement is actually not to tell the farmers you need to do this, but to explain to them the problem. So in our animations, we'll explain, these are the 2 or 3 issues you have to deal with. And these are the 4 different ways you can do it. And the pros and cons of way 1 is this, way 2 is this, way 3 is this. And so they've got a chunk of knowledge, a snippet or nugget of knowledge, if you like, with a few choices to make. Now, if they make that choice at the end of that animation, very simply through 4 simple images and choose one of these, how we're engaging with the farmers then is we push that straight into their calendar or their list of activities to do. So we link the training and the knowledge to the actual action and the reminders. And the key thing that maybe is not completely evident in how I'm explaining this is what we've actually done is we've got the farmer to engage with the knowledge and make a choice themselves, right? And by making that choice themselves, they're far more likely to follow up on it. Rather than being told you do this, you get them to make a choice, they own it, and they're likely to act on it. And they may not do everything in year 1, but we can keep reminding and adding, this was the choice you made, do you want to do it this year? So I think that's a little bit about how we communicate, how we make things real. I don't know really how much time we've got now, because I haven't talked about any of the specific problems like the market and the price access. But if you look at, there have been some very big projects in a number of countries, and I'm not sure the status in Pakistan, but if I look at the crop markets or the livestock markets, where the prices in those mandis or markets has been published, and simply by publishing those prices, the farmers have a stronger negotiating position. We've seen in India there have been problems that people have put fake prices in order to have a stronger negotiating position themselves. But actually, if you manage the quality of that, a farmer can now look at 2 or 3 different markets and say, which one should I go to? So the next bit of information is, okay, how much does it cost me to go to those different markets? And if we really wanted to do a value add for the farmers, we'd love to know how does as the arrivals go up in the market, the price tends to come down. And then at the end of that period, the arrivals come down, but the price goes up. So how much time does the farmer have to wait between hand to get a better price? And what's the risk in between? So there's all sorts of things that you can do with market pricing beyond purely publishing a price that really empower the farmers to earn more money. I'll just mention briefly, we do a lot of work on animal health and disease surveillance. Again, we're using animations there to share a number of symptoms, and I think we cover 140 different symptoms in cattle and link those to about 120 diseases. And the point here is actually when you start now to have an easy method for farmers to identify things, they can put a little tick and say, I've seen this. You then can share that information with a vet. Okay, and after sharing that information with a vet, the vet can then come into a dialogue. And so if you can make this digital channel far less intensive on the vet's time, you can cut the cost, increase the number of interactions, and make more and more farmers actually accessible to vets and vice versa. So you can increase the number of positive interactions going on that can reduce other side issues that develop, like antimicrobial resistance, by poor prescriptions or self-prescribing. And you know, this data that then is collected from the farmers can then be a very simple basis for a surveillance system. And it's what you would call a syndromic surveillance system, but then that can lead researchers to go and investigate developing issues. And those could be new developing zoonoses as well. I think it's probably a good time for me to stop there.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. Simon, it has been a wonderful, comprehensive kind of viewpoint you have given, and you have shared your experience. I would like to extend this a little bit for us, to learn more on supply chain disruption. That has been a challenge. We had been struggling. I don't know, Madam Shandana is here or not. We made a think tank, and we struggled with the wheat harvesting, then mango kind of supply chain. So, particularly in the pandemic scenario, how would you, look at the system of forecasting and managing the supply chains uninterrupted in the COVID scenario? Just brief, 1 minute, please. Simon?
Sorry, I wasn't sure if that was me. Yeah, so You know, I think that the whole point of being distant connected means you can actually start to give farmers access to market information. Now, another barrier in market information, and we've been doing some more work on livestock markets as well, for example, is there is a big barrier to making a trade from a distance. When you don't come and touch something and see it for real, you don't believe what you're getting. And so actually doing some sort of quality assessment, some grading of either the animal or could be a crop in a similar way, is something that can then empower you to do a distant transaction. And that transaction still, there may be some flexibility in the final agreed price when you get to see really this animal's not quite as big as I was told or looked in the online version. But you know, you've got that way of hooking things up. And similarly, if you've collected information from a calendar system about what a farmer has done either in his field or to his animal, that is the basis of traceability that then becomes very powerful for market traders to say, I know where something came from. And if they have an issue, they can track it back to different farms. I'll just give
right,
one.
Simon, you know, we have to cut it short, but essentially this has been a challenge and we faced it. Particularly the things were not that simple. For example, for mango harvesting, the mango harvesting picking starts early in Sindh, and the labor from South Punjab goes to the Sindh, and there were marketing issues, and export particularly were affected on air freights and things like that. That's it. So we did good, but essentially there are challenges.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, interestingly, just on that quality issue in mangoes, if you can put a premium on quality, you can make a big difference, because we've seen, we did a project in India on Alfonso mangoes at one point. And one of the issues that was going on there was the bad mangoes, the ones that had some fungal infection, were being hidden one layer down. And so what you were doing is you were infecting all of the good crop that then got shipped out and was destroyed on arrival. And it just has a big negative impact. Whereas
thank you, Simon. I have a lot to say on that. I have worked on it. We are working on it, and we are kind of we have a mission to replace those wooden boxes and come up with a. We as a university, by the way, launched a brand. We call it as Unifresh.
Okay.
That is a kind of objective of training the farmers for you know going to the export market, premium markets, and high valuations. But anyway, in the interest of time, the time is always short. So entrepreneurship is a big challenge that has been mentioned, to convert agriculture into businesses, or to move from subsistence to commercial agriculture. So the role of women is vast in agriculture, particularly, because I believe the rural women particularly, they play a huge, you know, kind of the hard work. They put in a lot of hard work in promoting agriculture, but somehow it is not rightly kind of factored in our overall progress. But now we have very capable ladies with us, Aisha Ahmed and Aisha Gulzar, and maybe Madam Shamdana Gulzar also. They would speak on the role of women in agriculture industry and improving agricultural productivity, improving skills, and empowering women. So which Aisha would speak earlier? Aisha Gulzar, you start, and then Aisha Ahmed can.
Thank you very much, Dr. Asif Ali. I can certainly say a few words. It was very heartening to note about all the subsidies and all the work and the platform that has been put together at the national level from Madam Shamdana Gulzar about all the work that is being done. But it is also equally important at this point in time to keep in mind that the importance of investing in rural women as a channel for progressive growth is significant. And that is something that we have to, keep at the back of our minds when we're doing all of this policy planning. So as you rightly mentioned, women, the labor of women, particularly in the agriculture sector, is vastly undocumented and not recognized is another, factor altogether. Women put in about 15 to 17 hours of labor per day in agriculture and related activities in livestock and poultry and all of that. However, that is not recognized. Another major factor that, in addition to a lot of these things, especially when we're talking about agri-entrepreneurship, is their access to finance. Access to technology is also a very important factor, but access to finance is one of the biggest things which hinders and impacts the role that women can play in enhancing agricultural output. Another thing is their ability or their lack of authority in decision making. Coming from the patriarchal society that Pakistan is, we need to look at how we can enhance the legal status of women in decision making, which will help them in securing not only finance, technology, but also how to formalize the work that they're doing and to get recognition for it. So we need to identify the means of enhancing the economic impact of women's work in agriculture and improving household food security and motivation. When we're looking at rural women, we need to be able to build women agri-leaders, especially in value addition, innovation, and improved marketing practices, and agriculture-based industry, whether cottage or micro or small. We then need to ensure that the enormous contribution which is made by these women is actually documented somewhere. And in fact, like Dr. Simon Holland was saying, when we're talking about platforms like the digital platform and smartphones and things like that, women, particularly in the rural area, who are the ones who are contributing to agriculture, who can contribute to agricultural productivity, do not have access even to smartphones. It's the men who are the gatekeepers for all kinds of information and knowledge that women can get access to. So how do we improve their access to this kind of knowledge, particularly with a technology-based platform? Those are some of the things that we need to take into consideration. Having worked on different projects with different donors, what we realized was when we put together women farmer groups as opposed to maybe just men farmer groups, the access to a knowledge network and an experience network became a lot more easier for women to leverage. And also for them to, it became a platform for them to collectively be able to gain access to skills, gain access to knowledge, as well as maybe gain access to group lending. As a result, the men also benefited, the community benefited, but it was the collective power of the women farmer groups that provided them that platform to be able to leverage this kind of thing. This helped them, these groups then were also became a channel to impart skills at the various stages of the crop cycle to these women. And where we had created experimental fields for the crop, we noticed that bringing in the women groups to these fields also helped with the transfer of knowledge and the experience and skills to these women farmers. So I mean, I'm just all over the place, but there's so much to say, and I'm just trying.
Thank you, Aisha. I know you can speak a lot on that. Let's ask the other Aisha Ahmed, what you would like to add.
Assalamu alaikum everybody, and thank you for having me over here. Aisha Gulzar has almost pointed almost all of the things that I wanted to say, and very precisely and very eloquently, I must say. So I just point out about how I started my entrepreneurial journey, as we have set up a digital platform, and one of its kind, the first of its kind in Pakistan, that's Spark Agri Market. And listening to Muhammad Imran Saab and Simon Holland, it was some things that we had already taken from both of you, the discussions that you have already done. So the first thing, actually how I started was that I was married to a family that was practicing agriculture, and professionally I was a computer engineer. I had that vision that how digital technology can intervene benefit the agriculture sector. And when in the family, I realized that the whole agri value chain is actually fragmented. The farmer does not know what crop to sow. He has no idea. He is mostly community dependent. There's no data, there's no analytics that which crop would be more profitable. then he does not have access to agri inputs. He's just limited to his locality. He does not even have access to egg prices and agri inputs in his neighboring city. And lastly, he does not have access to multiple markets. So we created a very, very simple website, and I coded that. And the benefit was that I could change it anytime. I could reiterate it, I could learn from the people. And initially, instead of going and teaching the farmers, what we did is that we learned from the farmers and made more revisions to our platform so that it's more easy for them. So we made it in local language. We started giving information, and that was probably the key. Because had we told them you need access to multiple markets, had we told them that you need access to inputs, multiple options for agri inputs, they wouldn't have shown interest. But we started off giving them crop information, some very basic information, how to recognize the type of plants, how to sow better, how to irrigate better, how to conserve water, in very simple, short, easy to digest kind of information that was audio aided. And then from there, as people started to learn, we used WhatsApp as the communication medium. There was literally no learning curve involved. And as people start to see the value in it, they started to learn the platform. And it was then that we added another chain to our platform, that was agri input vendors. Now, you know that most of the businesses are online. But in Pakistan, when you're talking about the agri value chain, what we forget, we always talk about the farmer and the output markets, the mandis. What we forget is the input market also. It was an important challenge for us to digitalize those agri vendors, because naturally once they are digitalized, once they have a digital presence, it was then that they can continue their businesses online, and during this COVID period also. And it was then that people could find products not only from their city, from the cities from across Pakistan. So people from Chakwal, place that does not get a lot of rain, they knew that we needed solar panels, but to access the solar panel vendors was the challenge that we addressed through our platform. And when they started to see the value, there was a very interesting community element that came in, that we saw that there was not a lot of smartphones, but they were the youngsters, the young generation that had the smartphones, and people started to go to them. There was just
Asha, thank you very much. We have to have another session on that. This is a very important area, particularly the entrepreneurship and rural entrepreneurship. We also have two examples of women entrepreneurs. One of the lady, she did her degree in food sciences. She opened up and branded a restaurant chain, and the name is Run Murid. So she's running successfully in Multan, and she's now launching in Lahore also. Then another girl, Ikra Zahid, she started a brand, Fresh Dry. She's drying vegetables and fruits, packing them good and trying to market. So thank you very much, sir. I really enjoyed and very fruitful discussions. We should continue these discussions through these means. But essentially, in the interest of time, I would like to thank and hand it over to Khalid to take it further. But essentially, thank you, Upsign. Thank you, all the collaborators there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Asif Ali Saab, for moderating this session. Very difficult session. I have a lot of questions there. Agriculture sector is so complex and such broad area. So, I couldn't put myself into sort of only one restricted. But again, we just have to think about the system approach, the holistic approach, the one Professor Nicola said in the beginning.